Hello class, and welcome to Notes 4.3, Zero and Negative Exponents, California Standards NS 1.2, 2.1, and AF 2.1. Our objective is to simplify expressions with negative exponents. Now, we've actually covered this in 4.1, but we were looking at preparing to turn into scientific notation, so we're turning into decimal form. Now we're going to be looking at those negative those negative exponents in fraction form. So first vocabulary is zero exponents. This is a review one. Any number to the power of 0 is 1. And our negative exponents, write the number and the exponent as a denominator and place a 1 in the numerator. So again, we covered this briefly, but we're going to spend a little more time on it now, particularly looking at turning into fractions instead of just decimals. Okay, let's go ahead and try a few out. Teacher example 1, pencils down. Use zero and negative exponents. First, this one we went over. Anytime you see that 0 as an exponent, you know right away the answer is 1. Okay, whatever it is, it becomes 1. Now here, 2 to the negative 5th power. First, I have this negative sign. I need to get rid of the negative in the exponent. It doesn't make my answer negative, and this is what I really want to stress. This is where a lot of students have trouble. It doesn't mean that you're going to have negative to the 5th power. It's very different than having a negative sign down here in the base. If you have a negative in the exponent, as we talked about before, you turn it into a fraction. So it's going to be 1 over 2 to the 5th. Notice I no longer have any negatives at all. And now I can simply solve 2 to the 5th. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. I think that was enough 2's. And I will end up with 32. So I have my 1 over 32, or 1/32 would be my final answer. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at student practice 1. Please try these 3 problems out, being careful. Remember, this doesn't make your answer negative. The exponent being negative doesn't make your answer negative. However, if the base is negative, your answer could be negative. So try it out. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look. 5 to the negative 3rd means we're going to put 1 over 5 to the 3rd. And then 5 to the 3rd, of course, is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. So 1 over 125. And notice I do not have the negative anymore. Number 2, we want to get rid of this negative by turning into a fraction. Then I have negative 3 to the 3rd. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, which does turn out to be negative 27. Now notice I rewrote it with the negative sign first, because you always want to start out with that negative sign. If you have a negative sign in the middle of a problem, it tends to look like a subtraction sign. So it'd be negative 1/27. Okay, this one I'm not going to do any work because right away I see that 0. I know my answer is 1. Okay, hopefully you did pretty well on those. Let's move on to teacher example 2. Now here we have a fraction and we have that negative exponent. Now we know when we see that negative exponent that we're going to turn it into a fraction, but it's already a fraction. So we're actually going to have, in a sense, a fraction of a fraction. 1 over 1/3 squared. Okay, now I need to square each of these numbers. So I'm squaring 1. 1 times 1 is 1. And I'm squaring 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So now I have 1 over 9. Okay. Now, this is a part that's kind of tricky. If it says 1 over 9, I've got this double fraction. I need to get rid of it. We've talked about in the past how this fraction bar also means division. So I could think of it as 1 divided by 1/9. And of course, whenever I'm working with division, I need to skip, change, flip, and I end up with 1 times 9 over 1, or 9. So now I'm doing 1 times 9, and I end up with 9. So I did my division by skip, change, flip, because remember when you're dividing with fractions, you have to actually change it into multiplication. Okay, so it's kind of a tricky one. Let's have you try it out and see how you do. 1 over x to the negative 4th, 1 over x to the 0 power, and 1 over x, 1/4 to the negative x. Now notice the directions say evaluate the expression when x equals 3. So we want to start by plugging 3 in for all the x's. Go ahead and try these out. See how you do. They may be a little tricky, and we'll go over those. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. First things first, of course, we have 1 over 3 to the negative 4th. Then, in order to turn it in, get rid of this negative in our exponent, because you never want to leave the negative in the exponent, we put a 1 over it. So we have 1 over 1/3 to the 4th. Now I multiply 1 to the 4th. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And then 3 to the 4th. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is the same thing as saying 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 3 is 9. And then 9 times 9 is 81. Now when I have these double 1s, skip, change, flip. 1 times 81 is simply 81. Number 5, anything to the 0 power already we know is 1. So I didn't even need to plug in the 3. Plugged it in just to show you following those steps, but right away when you see that 0 power, everything that's being affected by that 0 becomes 1. Okay, number 6, 1/4 to the negative 3rd power. So I need to get rid of the negative first, make it a 1 over 1/4 to now the positive 3rd power. And then I'm doing 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. And I have 1 over 64. Skip, change, flip. 1 times 64 is 64. Okay. Quick look at teacher example 3. The speed of a computer chip is measured in nanoseconds. 1 nanosecond is 1/1,000,000th of a second. Write 1 nanosecond as a power of 10. So we're kind of taking a look at a different direction here. We want to turn into a power of 10, which means we want to have an exponent. Powers of 10 now are the only time you can leave an exponent negative if that's what you come up with. So for example, when you're writing as a power of 10, that's the only time you wouldn't leave it as a fraction. So I count my zeros. I see I have 9 zeros, so 1 over 10 to the 9th. And then again, I've got that fraction. I want to turn it into a negative exponent. Again, this is the only time you ever leave your next exponents negative. So that 1 over implies that the 9 was negative, and we have 10 to the negative 9th. And then, of course, it's a word problem, so we want to add in our words of second. Okay, taking a look at our quiz for this first half of 4.3. Evaluate the expression. We've got our first 2 nice basic problems. Watch out for those negative exponents. The third one, we have a variable in there, so we want to turn our variable into the number first and then solve. Okay, take your time when you're ready. Put your answer into Schoology. Have a great day.